so it's for the refuah shalom of Gittel Mira Bat Mina Yehudit.
Shkach, thank you.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lasuk b'divrei Torah. Varevna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu u'fi amcha beit Yisrael. V'niyeh anachnu v'tzetzenu v'tzetzei amcha beit Yisrael, kulanu yodei shemecha v'lemdei Toratecha lishma. Baruch atah Adonai hamlemei Torah le'amo Yisrael. Amen.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher b'achar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen.
Okay.
Amen.
Amen. All right, guys, let's get started.
Okay, so what daf is it today?
4A3.
Okay.
All right. So what we did is we ended off yesterday to just say that the next section of the Mishnah explains it according to Rav's view, and why Rav basically said that Maveh means man. One of his primary reasons is that the nature of ox and the nature of man are very different. So that if an ox kills an ox, you don't pay the kofar. If a muad ox kills a person, you pay a kofar payment, which is an atonement, because the owner has been warned, and the owner should have known better than to not control an ox that was a habitual damager. But a person that kills a person is not subject to the kofar payment, not because there's a leniency, but because he gets the death penalty if it is on purpose, and if it's through negligence, he gets to the city of refuge, where he spends a lifetime until the Kohen Gadol dies. So we see in those particular cases, the reason why Rav wanted to make a distinction is because if an ox kills a ox compared to if an ox kills a man, there are differences. We also said that if a man kills a man, he's got 4 additional payments. Let's get this right. So if an ox kills a man or a man kills a man, they both have to pay nezek, actual damage. And within that actual damage, what is included is the person's loss of what their new status has enabled them to earn. So, for example, if they were a scribe, and in that area of a scribe, he was earning a good living, and now that ox has gored his hand and he becomes an amputee. We're talking about a case now of damage and not of death. Then the scribe can no longer earn as much as a scribe could, and now he can only be a night watchman. So his salary has been dramatically reduced. So that's part of the nezek, that's part of the actual damage that is required. In other words, if a person's ox damages a person and renders his arm useless and he was a scribe, you still have to pay that nezek, that actual damage, whether a person damages a person or an ox damages a person. So that's actual damage required. Now, if a person damages a person, there are 4 more payments. That payment is pain, tsar. So that's compensation for physical pain by the damaged party. And we're going to go into a later mission on 83b. Gavin did ask a good question yesterday about how these damages work, but it will be expanded upon, Gavin, don't you worry. Refuah, healing, is the compensation for medical costs of curing the damaged party. Shevet, which is unemployment, coming from the word Shabbat, which means you take a break, is the period of time of convalescing. In other words, the recovery time. And where the person is paid here is not in the capacity of CEO or scribe of what they were formerly earning, but in fact of what their new position entails. And the reason being is as follows, is that when they get back to work now that they're damaged, they can only become maybe a night watchman, no longer a scribe. So you're not entitled to, if you've paid the damage already in the actual damage of that compensation, pay it twice. This period of shevet, of unemployment, is the convalescing and the recovery time with regards to the new job, because the compensation was in the actual damage. And then you've got a case of what you call, it's not in all cases, beshet, which is humiliation. In other words, if you damage somebody in public, it's humiliating. So those are the four things that we're talking about. That was just a summary of the end part of yesterday. Does it all make sense before we go on to the bottom of 4A3?
Just want to say,
Yeah, it makes good sense.
Yeah.
For me, there's just one issue. It sounds very unfair that a scribe who was making, let's say, 10,000 shekels a month is now a night watchman making 3,000 shekels a month. And he only gets restitution of 3,000 a month while he's recovering.
No, Gav, that's not what we said. Let me just clear it up. I said in the actual nezek, the actual damage itself, the compensation about what he was earning before and what he's earning now is already paid in nezek. So when you're talking about the damage on the convalescing side, shevet, you don't pay it twice. You're paying the terms of recovery of the convalescing according to what he can do now.
Okay,
and,
so that beginning part, that you, what do you call it, nezek, that you pay, that's for the difference between what he used to earn and what he's currently earning.
Yes, but within parameters. Well, they call it according to the slave market, meaning, say, for example, you would hire, this is not a person in their own business necessarily. If you had to buy somebody that would be a scribe to write down all your notes for you, you know what I mean? He would take dictation. The rate that you would pay somebody that would take dictation is less than somebody that would do dictation in their own business, if they did it as a private enterprise. So the thing of it is, there's mercy shown to both parties. The damaged party is damaged, but you see, the thing of it is, you've also got to be fair to a certain extent with the nezek, because if an ox damages a person, and the guy happens to be a CEO compared to a more blue-collar worker, that could impoverish him. It's not like man damaging man. That's an ox damaging man, and that's nezek. That's the actual damage that both pay. So every case is worked out very specifically and different. All I'm saying is that you don't pay that compensatory for loss of earning potential with regards to what the capacity of the person was before compared to now twice. The one is convalescing, in other words, the recovery to what they're able to do now. That's a separate payment to the actual damage in terms of skills development lost as a result of the injury. So that's going to go through in 83B. All I'm saying is you don't pay it twice. That's an actual nezek.
All right, got it. I didn't understand that. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
And then my second question, part two of that, is for what period is that nezek, that payment, what's it based on? Is it
again, we said 83B.
We'll
In other words, it's not the basis of the discussion now. What this Gemara is coming to do is merely list the damages. This is chapter 1.
All right. Okay, it's fine. Thank you.
So, you know what? You have to hold on because we want
I'm excited. I'm keen to know. I'm keen to know what the calculation is.
Yeah. So what it's gonna lay is core principles down at that point. But at the moment, we were saying particularly that this was just to lay it out. Has Michael, Kevin, or Arthur got a question? It was a good question, Gav.
Thank you.
No, I'm good.
Yeah. Michael?
I'm good.
Kevin?
I'm okay.
Okay, so now what it's going to do is ask one other question. It's going to say, all right, now we've got a slight issue. And what that issue is now the Gemara is challenging Rav's view from the final section of the Mishnah. And what it's saying is the characteristic common to all the damages is their ways to damage. So what it wants to do is it wants to bring a challenge to Rav and say, Rav's view that ox in the Mishnah includes keren can be said that an ox is its ways to damage. Okay, so let me tell you what it's saying here. It's saying, firstly, this. Do you remember Yehuda's view of Shmuel, where when it termed ox, it termed it as keren, and when it termed maveh, it was a chain. In regel, it says was a category that was mentioned, was hinted at. And the Gemara didn't understand that option because it doesn't have some of the brises of Rav Yehuda. So Rava came to say, according to Shmuel, that the actual category of ox, which was regal, and the actual category of shane which was tooth, are full damages, the same as pit and the same as fire. And that Keren was hinted at because Keren isn't a full damage. So according to Yehuda and Rav, the Gemara's got a problem slightly with both of them, because they're saying that it talks about in the actual Mishnah that you're responsible for all the damages, meaning that there are ways to damage. Now, if you're using a term ways to damage, what you're saying is it's not rare. So let me explain to you what I mean by this. I have to unpack it. Regel is the way an animal moves. So when it's walking on things and tramples, right, it's normal. Every step, it damages what's under its feet. It can damage with its body, with the bit in its mouth, the pack on its back, etc. That's every movement it makes, it has a propensity for damage. Second thing of it is that shame for physical gratification, an animal is always eating or rubbing itself or sorting an itch. It's a natural twitch of an animal to be hungry and to move. So these things are common. And it's saying the criticism it's got on the view of Rav and Yehuda's view of Rav is that they're saying you want to bring the primary case, specifically on Yehuda's view that ox itself, the main categories on Keren, is that its propensity is not its way to damage because you've got tam. Tam means it's unusual that it damages in that way, and it was a rare occurrence, and only once it's done it 3 times does it become muad. So how would Rav Yehuda answer this, or how would Rav answer this? Because again, under Rav's category of ox, you've got Keren, Shane, and Regel. And Yehuda's category, the actual category of ox referred to as Keren, explaining Shmuel, and then Shane being, Mave being Shane. We don't have a problem with Rava because Rava mentions Regel as the primary category of ox, as well as Shane being Mave, which were both muad from the outside. In other words, it's ways to damage. So it's saying it doesn't understand where Yehuda's coming for or Rav's coming from, because they say if it's ways to damage, it means it's natural, which occurs with Regel and Shane. But with Keren, it's not common, which is why an animal starts off as tam. And then it becomes muad, because it's unusual. And it only becomes usual when it's an habitual gora. So why would you mention Keren if it's got the capacity for tam? Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Any questions? No questions.
No questions
All
at
right.
the moment.
So I'm going to assume there are no questions unless you stop me. So stop me when you're ready. Okay. So what we want to say is this is one of the reasons why we couldn't understand Yehuda. And it's not that Yehuda doesn't make sense. It's that over history, we've lost some brisas or brisot. I don't know what the plural is, explaining Rav Yehuda's point of view of how you would deal with that issue. Because in hundreds of years, we do lose those things. It's not that Yehuda didn't have an explanation on Shmuel. And Rav's answer for it is, listen, the same probably as Yehuda would have the answer, is that according to Rabbi Tarfon, even an animal that's tam in the beginning, you pay full damages for. Full damages. It's only the rabbi's opinion, the general rabbis that feel that you've got this concept of tam being half damages, and habitual gora, muad means the person was warned that his ox is habitual, is full damages. So they could say that Rav's opinion and Yehuda's opinion could have been going according to Rabbi Tarfon, where instead of the general rabbi's opinions, that you had this concept of half payment for tam and full payment of muad. And another suggestion is that Rav and Yehuda were both talking about a case where the animal was muad from the start. In other words, if you're coming to say that the first Mishnah is talking about cases of muad, because remember, Rav says muad is man. Man is muad from the time totally, whether he's sleeping or awake. We learned that. Whether it's spit to his mucus or his actual man's damage itself. So he's saying it's muad. And Rav is saying that, listen, an ox that's Keren can in fact be muad. And we're talking about an ox that's muad. You do have a leniency of tam, and paying from the body of the animal. But you do have cases where oxes that create keren damage are muad. So even there, it can be explained as to its ways to damage. So that was the challenge to Rav and Yehuda. Does that make sense?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. Now, Rav, it's and the reason could you say, then the Gemara wants to say, but how can you say that a sleeping man naturally damages? And you can say, and Rav's answer would be, since a man bends and stretches as he sleeps, his usual behavior is to damage when he sleeps. Why? Because when he's awake, he's more cognizant, and when he's asleep, he's not aware of what he's doing. So it can be, just like an ox can be muad, its usual behavior is to damage, so too with a sleeping man, he cannot control himself. And with regards to a man that's awake, well, there are people that don't behave themselves well. So even if a person is awake and accidentally damages, you're muad, you're responsible for full payment, whether your intention to damage was to not. Again, we were explaining muad is full damages, and when we say it's ways to damage, mankind, as Gavin said brilliantly last time, an entire book should be dedicated to the way man creatively damages another person, whether it's accidental or on purpose. So of course, it's man's way to damage. And that's the issue that Rav is challenging in Yehuda. Now, there was Rav Kamma, who also says that Mave he's got his own list of brisos, is that one of the four primary categories of damages, Mave is man, according to Rav Kamma, who's also a big deal. So that's a challenge against Shmuel. There's another big person that says that Mave is man. One last challenge that we need to deal with is it says that the obligation of watching them is on you. So this is a challenge to Rav, because when you say the obligation of watching it is on you, it's implying you have to, it means you're watching something else. If you tell me you're obligated to watch something, what it's implying is this has to do with man's property and not including man in itself. So this is an argument for Shmuel. And what we're saying is, how would Rav answer that? So Rav would say that when it says the obligation of watching it is on you, and the same with Kana, who taught the same as Rav, what we're saying is that this is regard to the three damages that's man's property or man's cause, which is the pit and the fire and the ox. But with regards to man itself, the obligation of watching it when it says is on you is on yourself, because you have to watch yourself. It doesn't exclude the person. So if you want to say it excludes the person and this is only dealing with property, you can say, yes, 3 of the cases is dealing with property. And where man is included, according to Rav and Kana, we're saying that, yes, we have to watch ourselves. So that is not exclusive. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Now, how many minutes have we got of this particular one left? Because we need to have a short insert because we lost some time. And I don't want to...
2 minutes 50, Dames.
2 minute 50. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to deal with the next section. And the next section is we're on 4B1. And what we're basically saying is that there's a slight issue here, because neither Rav and Shmuel's scriptural interpretation is literal. In other words, what they've done is, remember Boeh and Nive, they took concepts that were mentioned scripturally and they applied them in a conceptual manner. And they're saying it wasn't a literal translation. Remember the seeker and the exposed one and the exposer and the sought. Do you remember when we did that particular issue? So we're saying neither Rav's nor Shmuel's fits in exactly, according to both the fact that the scriptural reference is more conceptual, and secondly, that there are problems with both, because the logical proofs you could find for each other merit, which means that particular one's opinion is not foolproof according to the other. So it wants to bring, maybe there are another 2 cases of what Maveh means, according to Rav Miri and according to Rav Zevid, which we're going to deal with right now. So we last time was 4b1, where it says the interpretation of Rav and Shmuel's students Yehuda and Rava is not always an exact fit. It's very, it's conceptually relevant in terms of the scriptural sources, but it's not literal. What do we mean by literal? When it uses the term the ox kills, that's pretty literal. When you're saying that the ox means such and such, and killing means such and such, or a tooth means exposed and hidden, and the seeker is man, these are using scriptural sources, but using conceptual attachment. So it's not perfect according to each other. In other words, Rav has got issues with Shmuel, and Shmuel has issues with Rav. So it says, well, let's see if there's anything else that can be closer. So it brings two other rabbis. And the one rabbi brings is Rav Mari, and the other rabbi brings is Rav Zavid. And they both use the same source. So let me just read to you where the source is. It brings a source in Isaiah 64:1. And what we said of it is that, firstly, the one problem with these other two sources that we're going to have is that it's not scriptural, meaning the scripture has to be from the 5 books of Moses in the Chumash. And when we say yes, but we're using Isaiah 64:1 because it's in reference to what the word actually means, and we're not deriving halacha from it, that answer is acceptable. So let me just tell you what the concept is of that verse. So the verse concludes, to make known your name to your enemies, so that you shall make known your name to your enemies when you eradicate them from the world. So what it's doing is it's explaining in Isaiah an analogy of how Hashem is going to get rid of the enemies of Klal Yisrael. And when it uses the Hebrew, it uses, according to Rav Mari, the concept of maveh to describe the element of water. In other words, water being a damage. Because it says, as fire burns meltables, as water bubbles, tivir. So you're saying tivir is not maveh. Well, neither is boeh, and neither is the word for nive, for it consumes. Because let's check this out. If we want to look at Rav and Shmuel, they never use the word maveh being maveh. They talk at what the characteristics of man is, or the characteristics of a tooth. So to here, it says, well, the characteristics of maveh is related to tivir, which is talking with reference to water. So we're going to just unpack this for a couple of minutes. So basically, in Isaiah 64:1, it's saying, how do I say this in English? As fire burns meltables, as water bubbles fire. So what it's talking about is that how water is going to quench a fire, just like Hashem will quench the enemies of Klal Yisrael, so too water quenches a fire. So what happens when water quenches a fire? What happens in that case? It sizzles. Guys, it makes it sound like a sizzle. In other words, there has to be more water than fire. And the terms of it is, if initially there's not enough water, then what happens to the water that's acted upon by fire? It starts to bubble. Yeah, it does evaporate. But if it was contained in a container before it evaporates, the water would have to bubble. Again, you have to have 100 degrees Celsius in order to reach boiling point. When you've got that sort of boiling point, you then have the evaporation process that kicks in. But before the evaporation process, you would need the water to start bubbling. Because from a cool state, to get to that period where it changes from ice to water, or water to steam, and evaporation to occur, you would need fire to enact on the water. And therefore, the water would have to be described as tivir. And tivir means bubbles.
Sorry?
Okay?
Bubbles, sorry.
Bubbles, yeah. So here we're referring to it as being water. Okay? That's according to Rav Murray. So it's saying, listen, firstly, it doesn't make sense. It's now criticizing Rav Murray. It says because fire bubbles water. Water doesn't bubble fire. In other words, what's enacting upon which? If you want to use this example and saying it's water, it's very, Gavin, is that your phone?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. It's not your fault, Gav. I'm turning my phone on also. I just recognize your bubble because I know you so well.
Yeah.
I know the
So,
sound
so
of your
Kevin, what,
I'm impressed. You had a 1 in 5 shot and you got it right.
Thanks, man. So, sorry, Michael, what did you ask?
why does it be one or the other? Why can't it be both acting upon each other?
Okay, it's a great question. So let me tell you what the implication is that if you're paying for a damage, you can't have it vague. So both Rav and Shmuel would have to say, listen, it's either referring to, Mav is referring to Shane, meaning it's another category of damage caused by an ox. It's another reason an ox does damage. Either it's the way it naturally moves. Alternatively, it's the way an animal derives physical gratification. Or it could be that the ox itself has an intention to damage or kill. So it has to be specifically assigned because you're paying them those damages. The same thing as Rav wants to say that Maveh is man because we have to know what that definition of a damager is. And the same as ox is referring to Keren, Shane, and Regal under that subcategory of ox as the primary category. So you get what I'm saying? So when you're talking about payments, if we have to go to court and I have a claim against you, you can't go to court and then at that point dispute what the damage, are we covered for this damage or are we not? Because what happens is the Gemara then chooses a particular view of Rav Shmuel and says, well, this is what the damager is referred to. And on that basis, once we have created definitions of damage, it's on that basis that we pay. At the moment, yeah?
No, Karen. So then, therefore, I understand.
Yeah.
If I understand you correctly, if it can't be water and fire can't be simultaneous, there has to be some sort of outcome. Then the outcome depends whether fire wins or water wins. At the end of the day, if there's enough water to put out fire, great. If there's not enough to put out, then fire wins. I mean.
Okay, so you do have a case where, in a way, that even if they were joined, it would have to be one or the other. Let me just explain to you what I mean here. The first issue is as follows: is that before we get to this joining, if we have a look at a case of Rav and Shmuel, they're not arguing because both of them include in their categories Keren, Shane, and Regal, and both of them count in their categories as man. It's just Shmuel doesn't bring it in the first Mishnah, because according to Shmuel, just remember, man is brought in the later Mishnahs in 15b, and it's not mentioned at this point because according to Shmuel, it's talking about damage to one's property. You get what I'm saying? So, and it's not talking about man. So it's not that Shmuel is coming to discount man. He's going to obligate man in the later chapters. All we are doing now is looking at the hierarchy of definitions according to Rav and Shmuel. But when it comes down to halacha, believe me, you're responsible for damage, whether it's your property or whether it's a person that damages. In terms of what you pay, that's when it's going to matter. The specifics of it, how much you pay, when you pay, why you pay, etc. Now, let's take a case of water and fire combining. If we say that, for example, boiling water would create injury, although it could be argued there that that's fire combined with water, right? Because you either get a burn where you get burnt by oil, you get burnt by water, or you get burnt by actual flame or smoke inhalation. These are all damages. But if we have to look at that, we either have to classify that as a fire damage, meaning fire can take different forms. It could take actual flame. It could take noxious inhalation where oxygen is deprived and people die of the smoke inhalation to lung. It could take the damage of oil burning or water burning. But that technically would be a damage of fire, because this is exactly as you bring in, Michael. This is the challenge against Rav Murray. So it's saying, hang on, we need to define if it's the fire causing the water the problem or the water causing the fire. Because if it's fire causing water, then the actual thing that's causing the problem is fire. Because if the water's burning you, that's a problem related to fire. It could be a type of damage of fire, whether it's oil, smoke inhalation, water damage, flamage, that would go under fire. Does that make sense? When we talk about water damage, what we're saying is that maybe the water damage, because somebody was at a party and I played sillies. I had a couple of drinks and I threw a glass of water on you, and it landed on your phone. Or I knocked your phone in the swimming pool and your phone was damaged by water. Let's take that as an example. So that's water damage. Does that make sense? So it's different. So if water damages electronics, that's water damage. If boiling water that caused by the fire burns or scalds a person, as well as oil, flame, or smoke inhalation, that would be fire. That was actually causative. It would be the fire that's bubbling the water, so that would go under the category of fire. Right. Makes sense. They're two different damages.
So where does water fit in? Because you can also get drowning as well. The person can drown in water.
No, but that's a case of Sanhedrin where you chayiv misa, you're liable for the death penalty, or you liable b'da shemaim at the hands of heaven. We're talking about here. We're not talking about death cases. That will be covered in the Zikin under Sanhedrin. All we're talking about here, when we do talk about death cases, is when a property kills a man, like a muad ox, or if man kills man, it's referred to in Sanhedrin. It just mentioned here because it says there's no kofir payment because a person's paying with their life. So let's not go into death penalty cases here.
Perfect.
Okay. It's a good point, Gav, but it's definitely a different part in the Zikin. Okay. So what we're saying here is, here's some of the issues that they have with it. Firstly, yeah, because you know what? I've got nerve damage in my foot, by the way. And so
no, the actual picture. The picture was like.
Oh no, that's the cat.
No, it's fine. It's probably just on my side. Don't worry.
Is it better now?
That's perfect.
Okay, sometimes I got this. What do you call it? The slight. It could be me or the cat. I don't know. Anyway, I need to edit these parts out.
That is a technical thing. Don't worry.
All right. So, all right. Let's just bring up some of the problems of Rav Murray that they have against Rav Murray's argument. The first thing is they said, well, listen, is it an action where the fire is upon water? In which case, if fire eradicates the water, because it, as you said, evaporates and bubbles it, fire is the cause. If you say it's water that sizzles out the fire, then you've got an issue with regard to water, because you want to use the singular and the word mayim is plural. So it's got a problem as far as that's concerned. So they said either way, Rav Murray, it's not a perfect explanation. You get what I'm saying? And let's bring one other point, which is a very, very big issue. Remember, it says the ox is not like the mave is not like the ox. But both the ox and the mave are living, okay? Unlike the fire and the pit. And it says the ox, mave, and fire are animated and move as their damage is caused by movement, unlike the pit that's stationary. But let's understand this. Mave is living. It's living.
Yes.
So how can it be water? This is the biggest refute. The way it's saying, okay, so listen, I understand that you might deal with the water damage later. Fine. But Rav Murray, you can't bring this. Because let's forget about the word that mayim is plural, and you're not bringing the plural, and water sizzles the fire, and even if it's not living. both ox and mave are living. So that discounts
But mave moves.
Murray's argument.
Sorry, I mean, water moves depends on the context of how you talk.
No. It
Living beings.
It says
living creatures.
So it says in the beginning of the Mishnah, if you remember the very first Mishnah, it says the ox is not like the mave is not like the ox. Both the ox and the mave are living. So mave is described as living, and you asked me a brilliant question a few days ago, and you said, but how can tooth be living? And I said it's the anatomy that occurs on the living. Just like, that's according to Shmuel, just like according to Rav, a man's mucus isn't living, but it comes from the mucus and saliva comes from the anatomy of the living. They're both in agreement there, both Rav and Shmuel. So whether it's anatomy or the phlegm or whatever the case may be, it's from the living. Ox is living, a man is living. Water is not living. So that argument is now out. Right. Then we've got an argument according to Rav Zivid that said it's referring to fire. Because according to Rav Murray, it said that the water puts out the fire. As God will basically put out the enemies of the Jewish people. So as water puts out fire, so will the enemies of the Jewish people be put out by Hashem in terms of their stopping them from damaging us. And Rav Zivid says, no, what's happening here is the fire is evaporating the water. It's not that the water bubbles the fire. Yeah, the fire bubbles the water. So it's in reference to the fire, not water. And the fire is evaporating the water. So that's Rav Zivid's, that's how he got fire. Because he's saying fire is causative here. And it's not that the water is putting out the fire. The fire is bubbling the water and causing it to evaporate. Okay. So we have a problem with Rav Zivid. And I want to ask you guys, could you possibly think of what the problem is? There are 4 problems, but think of one. This is an open question.
What? About the water problem?
No, Gav. We've discussed water. What I said to you is Rav Murray is saying that Mave refers to water because it says that the water put out the fire. That's how he interprets the verse in the Isaiah. Basically, Hashem is going to obliterate the enemies of Israel. And Rav Murray is saying he obliterates it because if water is thrown on fire, the fire sizzles out. Okay? And bottom line, Rav Zivid says that the fire is evaporating the water. And he said that's, so they're both determining a different word from the analogy that Hashem will destroy the enemies of Klal Yisrael. So again, Rav Murray is talking about water. We said that water was knocked out the picture. Rav Zivid is using the term that the fire is causing the water to bubble. Therefore, the fire is the catalyst. So what is the problem with Rav Zivid? We already discussed the problem with water. Does that make sense?
Okay, so that's fine. So Rav Zivid is he trying to say that Mave is fire?
Yes. Excellent.
That's a problem.
Okay, so Rav Murray is saying that Mave is one sec. Rav Murray is saying that Mave is water. Rav Zivid is saying that Mave is fire. Okay. Now I'm asking you, Gav, what's the reason, any of you guys, that water can't be under the category of Mave?
Because it's not living.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the same answer to fire.
Exactly, Gavin, you're awake. That's exactly the problem. They're saying it doesn't matter, guys, whether it's Rav Murray or Rav Zivid. The bottom line is, at least according to Shmuel and Rav, they're talking about the living, whether it's a mucus from man who is living or the anatomy of a tooth on the ox. It's a living. Both of them are at least in the ballpark. It's not Rav Murray saying it's water is counted out because why? Water is not a living, breathing thing. And if you want to say that Rav Zavid is talking about fire, it can't be for the same reason that fire is not living. Well done, Gav. Well done.
Well.
All right. Now, guys, there's another three
Marco.
problems. There's another three problems. Can you work out what the other three problems is of Maveh being fire?
Well, because there's a direct source for fire already. So
Explain further.
Okay, so there's a source, because there's a source for directly from the Torah, from the Chumash, talking about fire. It talks about the ox, the pit.
Excellent.
Each category: the ox, the pit, maveh, and fire. So there's a
you
separate
mean from
category.
the Mishnah? It's not. You're saying it's already mentioned in the Mishnah. So
it's already mentioned as a category in the Mishnah as a separate. So how can maveh? You can't have two fires.
Excellent, guys. Do you hear what Gavin's saying? Why mention fire twice? You've mentioned it. You've said ox, maveh, pit, and fire. Why would maveh be fire if fire is already mentioned as a fourth damage?
Yeah, sorry, in the Mishnah. Sorry, not in the.
There's a separate category.
Sorry, yeah.
No, but Kev, that's exactly what Gavin's saying.
Yeah.
He's saying you've mentioned first thing is Hashor, the ox, Habor, the pit, Maveh, Harveh. Maveh has to refer to the living, so that cancels out Rav Murray and Rav Zevid's argument of Rav Murray being water and Rav Zevid being fire, because the actual category of Maveh, number one, has to be living, from the anatomy or part of the living. So that would cancel out both of them with regards to listing fire or water as Maveh. And then Gavin is mentioning a perfect point here. Haveh, after Maveh, means fire. So why mention fire and fire? You've mentioned it. Gavin, that's spot on. Pretty good.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, it's
Guys,
quite
do you
obvious.
understand his other argument? Gavin's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Marco?
Yeah?
You get it. I need feedback, guys. I can't hear you.
Yeah, it's cool. It's good.
Okay.
Great on my
Awesome.
side.
Okay, Kevin. All right, Kevin. Excellent. All right. Sorry, guys. I'm reading the Aramaic and everything, so I can't see you. That's why I just can't see a facial expression. So I just need you to say understood. All right. Now, so Gavin, that's excellent. But you've got one or two other issues. Let me just state what they are. One of the other issues is they say, let me just use the Aramaic word. How many damages are there, guys?
Four.
Right.
Four.
If you're mentioning Maveh as fire, and you're mentioning fire, how many damages are there?
Three then.
Yes. So that's the proof that Gavin is correct. That's exactly the proof. Is why I mentioned fire twice, and if you want to say it comes to mention a different sort of fire, you can't. You can't do that because it says, let's look at what this chapter is called. It's called Arba Avos, the four damages, the four primary damages.
So they're dropping it
can't
to three here. They're dropping it to three. That's a problem.
Yes. So that's in essence the issue. And also, let me just. So that's it. I mean, we've cleared it up completely. So listen, I don't want to carry on because what's going to happen next time is we're going to discuss that there are 13 primary damages according to Rav Oshia, and it's an entire different section. But I think we've dealt with this issue further. The only thing that I want to bring is there's a commentary by the Rashba and the Shita Makubet, which says that it's not that Rav Mari and Rav Zaved is actually offering legitimate alternative interpretations. These guys were geniuses. They obviously know that even somebody that reads it basically and says that Mave and ox are living, right? They can read that. These are geniuses. So what's it, according to the opinion of other Rishonim, like the Rashba, etc., it says that they're not seriously, basically, they're not actually entertaining fire and water. What they're doing is that they're trying to refute an argument by others saying, yes, you can always take a conceptual analogy and take scripture and juxtapose the two of the seeker being man or the tooth being exposed and unexposed. And they turned around and they said, Joe, you think it's so easy. It's not so easy. Let me show you some examples. Let's take a scriptural source where it's very similar conceptually with the word tavir, and let's show you two different ones, and you can see it's not so easy to do. So in fact, they're using it to prove Rav and Shmuel. They're not coming to argue. They're saying it's not so easy.
It's like a devil advocate type of thing.
Well, Hashem's advocate, but yes.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, my apologies. Okay.
That's fine. But
I come from a secular background.
Yeah, but not that secular. So that's exactly it. So Rav Mari and Rav Zaved, we're not coming to, according to this opinion of some Rishonim, to actually argue and propose their own. They're saying, listen, it's not such an easy exercise to take words and make sure it matches exactly with the living, and this is how. And others that say, yes, they did bring it up as an argument. So I think we're going to end on this note. Are there any further questions?
No, I'm happy.
Okay, good. Michael, all good?
Good.
Thank you very much, Damon.
Pleasure. Have a great day. And
Thanks,
thank you
mate.
for the